On today's episode of Uncommon Sense, we speak about the upcoming Chesterton Conference this summer outside of Philadelphia and all of the great things you're going to hear there. And we remember in a special way the passing of our dear friend, the great Chestertonian, Aidan Mackey, on May 4th with the president of the Chesterton Society, Dale Ahlquist. Hello again, viewers and listeners. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Sense. My name is Joe Grabowski, the Vice President for Evangelization and Mission here at the Society of G.K. Chesterton, joined as always by my wonderful co-host, Grettelyn and Joe. Hi, Grettelyn.
Hi there, Joe.
And we are very honored to have with us today the President of the Chesterton Society, Dale Ahlquist. Hi, Dale.
Hello, Joe. Hello, Grettelyn. God bless you both.
God bless you, too. And I mentioned what we'd be speaking about today in the intro of that we have the conference coming up, but kind of more at top of mind right now as we record. This is May 13th. So just on May 4th, we lost a great light out of the world. But of course, we know that now in a certain way he can shine even brighter for us who remember him. Aidan Mackey. And while to those of us sort of in the Chesterton movement, Aidan sort of is up on the Mount Rushmore, so to speak, of figures in this. There may be many who are unfamiliar with Aidan. So I wonder, Dale, if you could maybe just give the folks tuning in a sense of who Aidan was, what his contribution to the Chesterton movement, Chesterton scholarship was, and why this loss is so great, but why also we remember him so fondly.
Sure. I think the first thing to remind everybody, especially anybody who doesn't know, Aidan died at 101 years old and 6 months. Little kids will tell you, I'm 9.5. When you get really old, you start saying, I'm 101 and a half. You start counting the half years. And, so he was 6 months short of his 102nd birthday, which is just astonishing. And I have known him myself since 1990, which is the first Midwest Chesterton Society conference that I attended in Milwaukee, the conference that became our national conference eventually. I walked in late, and because I had locked my keys in my car. And the first thing I noticed when I walked in was everybody in the room, probably about 25 people in folding chairs, turning to me in unison and probably all wondering the same thought. How could such a young person be attending the average age probably in that room was 55 and up. I mean, the average age was probably north of 60 in the room. And many of those people have gone on to their greater reward. But that was my first meeting with other Chestertonians, and it was Aidan Mackey who was in the midst of a lecture. He was speaking on Chesterton's poetry. So here was this wonderful old British gentleman in his unique British accent. It can't even be placed in England. He's from Manchester, but even people from Manchester couldn't recognize his accent. And he was reciting Chesterton's poetry. I was in heaven. I said, first of all, I said, there's more people like me, and now I've even got an authentic Englishman reading Chesterton. It was a great moment. So that thus began my relationship with him, and I was certainly on the periphery because I was not myself a main figure in the Chesterton Society. So everybody else knew him better, and he knew everybody else better. But that's how we started to get to know each other. And I bought a couple of things from his table that he was selling, and a couple of old Chesterton books, and out of print, and even a couple of Chesterton drawings, which was really thrilling. It was selling those. And later throughout, he would come back to some of these Midwest Chesterton conferences, and then when we moved the conference to Minnesota, which was in 1998, he was a speaker at our second conference in 1999. And 2000. He spoke at our third conference in 2000. And then he spoke again the following year, 2001. So 2 years in a row. And when he came that first time in 2000, and I got him off the plane, he was carrying with him this Chesterton's walking stick that Chesterton acquired in Poland. It's from Zakopane, Poland. Hand carved. It's got an eagle on one side and a battle axe on the other side. And he was walking with this, and he said, "This is Chesterton's walking stick. In fact, this is the one that's on your logo, on the Chesterton logo. He's holding up the walking stick there.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it there.
Nice.
This is the one that's on your logo, and which is based on a photograph. Based on this, the logo is based on this photograph here, and there he is holding the walking stick there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cool, and so that was great. You know, it's like shaking hands with Chesterton. Well, when he came back the second year in 2001, he also had the walking stick with him, and he said, "This time I'm going to leave it here. This is my gift to you." It was sort of that moment of passing on the mantle, as it were. It was really quite moving. He was so grateful that the Chesterton project was in good hands, because the reason why Aidan is so important is that he was the torchbearer in the great darkness from the 1950s and 60s and even early 70s. There was just no one openly promoting G.K. Chesterton. He published his own, I think it wasn't even a monthly, it might have been a monthly, journal, a magazine, started off being called The Defendant, in the same name as Chesterton's first book of essays. And that was in 1950, he was publishing that. So that kind of became the link to the old GK's Weekly. He was really arguing for distributism and Chesterton's great importance. And then the title of the magazine became The Distributist. And he published it up until 1958. And again, a symbolic year. That's the year I was born. And he was a schoolmaster, but he sold used books, and that's how he not only supplemented his income, but that's how he promoted Chesterton. He'd collect old Chesterton out-of-print books and resell them, and that was really the only source of Chesterton books, because I think only 6 of his books were in print only 6 of his books have remained in print since they were first published. Orthodoxy, Everlasting Man, St. Francis and St. Thomas Aquinas, and The Man Who Was Thursday, and the Father Brown stories. And so that when I started reading Chesterton in 81, those were the only 6 books in print. Everything else, we had to start, looking in the used bookstores and booksellers like Aidan Mackey. So yeah, it went from just being a little glowing ember to something quite large and now worldwide. And it's this Chesterton Aidan Mackey kept that light burning. So I was a guest at his house when I went to England a couple of times. He's been a guest at my house, and just one of the most witty and lovely men you'd ever want to meet. But because he was so old, he knew people who knew Chesterton. Never met Chesterton himself, but he knew other figures who were involved with GK's Weekly. He was very good friends with Dorothy Collins, Chesterton's secretary, and he got one good story after another out of those people.
Wow.
Amazing. I was going to ask if you ever met Chesterton, but you just answered it.
He was a teenager. So Aidan was born in 22, born in the year that Chesterton converted. And he was, so in 1936, what is he, about 18 years old or something like that? And that's when he started reading Chesterton. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he did tell a story, if I recall, that he was once at a gathering, I believe, at Belloc's house somehow when Aidan was, I think he said he was a boy. He was young. And Chesterton came in the other room, and he said he could
No,
hear
that's
him.
not quite the story. Yeah, okay.
Oh, is that not? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
not quite the story. So I got to correct myself too. He was 14 when he started reading Chesterton. So Chesterton was still alive when Aidan started reading him. It was his older brother told him the way he said, "Get your snout out of that book you're reading and read something decent," and handed him a Chesterton book. I think it was The Man Who Was Thursday. And Aidan's first reaction was, "Oh, this is a great book, but he's probably just a one-book author like John Bunyan." And John Bunyan wrote 50 books, but he's only known for the Pilgrim's Progress. So then when he kept reading, he realized, no, he's more than a one-book author. So the story that you're referring to is 1950. That would be the year that he started publishing The Defendant. Belloc is still
and it's
alive.
Belloc, okay.
Yeah, and he visits Belloc's home, where Belloc's son-in-law, lives there with the older man, and he goes there in connection to the magazine that he was publishing, the Defendant, and his work on a student, to get some books and to get Reginald Jebb, is the name of Belloc's son-in-law, to participate in some way, to ask him some questions. And he heard Belloc in the next room coughing. And, the English, they're so proper and so polite. And Reginald Jebb didn't say, "Oh, would you like to meet my father-in-law?" Because that's what you have to wait for. You have to wait for the introduction. And so the Englishman doesn't say, "Oh, is that Belloc in the other room? Can I go in and see him?"
Yeah.
So Aidan likes to he always said, I prefer to be known as the man who didn't meet Belloc.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, perhaps, Dale, what you mentioned Aidan selling used Chesterton books and things, but the kind of primary collection, as it were, what is now housed at the Notre Dame Gateway in London, was also in connection with Aidan. And maybe just fill listeners in on, because you talked about the walking stick, but how did so many of these Chesterton artifacts, what was Aidan's role in sort of their custody?
Yeah, good question. So he had this collection of books. They were a combination of complete collection of Chesterton's books, but also, just as important, secondary material and books about Chesterton, books that refer to Chesterton, books that Chesterton refers to himself when he's writing. So it's just a huge resource that he had assembled, along with some manuscript material and other artifacts such as Dorothy Collins' typewriter, the typewriter that typed all those great books from the last 12 to 14 years of his life. And Everlasting Man and Thomas Aquinas were typed on that typewriter. And he also had the pince nez, Chesterton's hat. And then and so this collection was kind of had to wander around. It was always a great source of discomfort for him, and nerve. He was just really worried that there was no place to house this collection, and it was at a college in Oxford for a while, but that college actually closed. It was then taken over by the Oratorians at the Oxford Oratory, and it looked like that was going to be the permanent home for it. But they didn't have the money to sustain the facility, and along comes the University of Notre Dame, and they make a deal that they would they would own the collection on the condition that the collection stay in England. So University of Notre Dame has this campus right off of Trafalgar Square, just this prime piece of real estate in London. It's called the London Gateway campus to Notre Dame. And Joe and I were there right before the grand opening, so we saw it just before they lifted up the curtains. There was still a few things wrapped in plastic when we were there,
Oh,
but it was very exciting to see. It's just a beautiful, beautiful facility, and there's a wonderful big portrait of Aidan there. And so it's honoring him, but it's for the man who assembled that collection. And then also, it is the Chesterton Collection. So great resource.
might be a collection of relics someday.
Yeah. Well, that is where the big relic is there, which is a lock of Chesterton's hair from his childhood. And yes, I've got a few strands of those in a reliquary here in my study.
Beautiful. Was Aidan ever recognized, like, outside of the Chesterton circle as preserving this great literary figure?
I think that he never got the recognition that was due him until the opening of the Notre Dame collection, which happened just a couple weeks after his 100th birthday.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, Joe and I were there for the 100th birthday, and they couldn't coordinate the opening. But I said I'd rather go to Aidan's 100th birthday than to the opening of the collection.
Well, we ask our listeners, viewers, to certainly pray for Aidan, for the happy repose of his soul, for all those who are mourning his loss, who were touched by him. But my sense so far has been that good Chestertonians that we are, and believers as we are in the democracy of the dead, the sense has largely been not so much one of mourning as a celebration of life, and that this voice now is not silenced, but just communicating in another way, and close to the ear of God, we pray. And so we ask you to pray for Aidan, pray for the society with Aidan, and for the future of the Chesterton movement, and whoever those next great figures like Aidan will be that get raised up in this movement. We know that hopefully there's some out there in one of our many schools. So, anything else on Aidan?
The biggest shock of his death was I thought he would just live forever.
Yeah.
I just didn't expect him ever to die.
Yeah.
He's amazing how I had emails from him just within the last few months, and just as witty as ever. So God bless him. He was a great friend and a great privilege to know him.
Yeah, and nice. He so much you would think at 101 years of age that there'd be sort of a fading, but he was Bilbo Baggins right there. It just did not slow down. It seemed still adventuring right to the end. So God bless him. If we can move on, Dale, we do want to encourage. You mentioned the first time that you met Aidan. These wonderful serendipitous meetings that occur between Chestertonians, and you get to meet your heroes and friends that you never knew you had at a Chesterton conference. And we have a great one coming up this summer. Any highlights of that you'd like to point out to us, Dale?
Well, as far as I can tell right now, Joe, I think it's going to be the greatest conference ever, best conference ever. First of all, we are going to be celebrating Chesterton's 150th birthday, and that's going to be a reason for gathering. And because it's the city of brotherly love that is the hosting area. Your city, Joe. Our theme of friendship is going to be just a perfect theme, because it is a gathering of great friends brought together by Chesterton. But yes, some outstanding speakers, and I think some people that are new on the radar that have not had a direct connection with us before. Alan Harrelson and his Southern twang, I think, is going to be a real really charming talk. And because we've just seen the release of The Everlasting Man, the new edition, we're going to have a great talk from Susan Hansen from the University of Dallas, who's going to be talking about part 2 of that book, which is on the man called Christ. She gave a talk on part 1 back in Orlando a few years ago. And And the promise was she'd always come back and finish the book, and now it's perfect timing. And then, of course, we also just had the release of the localism book, and so we'll have a panel of several of the contributors to that book. So, the themes of localism and Chesterton's own application of Catholic social teaching is going to be a big emphasis, but also the everlasting man, his great work, on Christian apologetics. So, I mean, right there's the whole gamut of Chesterton and everything in between, and that's what we're going to have, is everything in between as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm particularly excited about, as you mentioned, just sort of new voices, and we have quite a few of them in the localism panel. I mean, any one of the gentlemen participating on that panel, could command a session on his own, and it's just we have Dr. Fahey, our good friend and one of your fellow troubadours, Bill Fahey from St. Thomas More College of the Liberal Arts, and then we have Father Michael Rainier, who is associated with the what do they call it? The Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter. So he'll be speaking. One of the contributors, Jason Craig, who I know some people may know. He wrote the great book Leaving Boyhood Behind. Excellent kind of book on the crisis of maturity, especially for men nowadays. And my old colleague and friend, and really a wonderful scholar in sort of the agrarianism and American side of what would have been the distributist movement back in the day, Alan Carlson, who has written on the works of the likes of Herbert Agar and others like that, who were sort of doing on this side of the pond what Belloc and Chesterton were doing over in England. So that's going to be a great session. Alan Harrelson from Pipe Cottage, who we did have on the podcast once previously, and I know people were great fans of him. He'll be speaking on a great subject, which is St. Philip Neri, G.K. Chesterton, and the pursuit of joy, and what joy means sort of in the Christian life, not as a byproduct. If you're unfamiliar, viewers and listeners, with St. Philip Neri, he was the founder of the kind of Oratorian model in spirituality, very influential, therefore, on John Henry Cardinal Newman, and one could certainly say on Belloc and Chesterton by extension. But he was also known as a great, practical joker, and somebody who really had a great sense of humor, and let the virtue of kind of joy, the fruit of the Holy Spirit of joy, kind of really resonate in his personality. So that'll be a great one, and might even be a little bit of a musical element to that talk. I won't say any more. So that will be great. We also have another.
The troubadours will all be there again.
Yeah.
So it's your chance to see all 5 troubadours in the same place.
Yeah. That's, I mean, that alone, if you're not sold yet, that alone, we have, as Dale and William Fahey have already been mentioned, but Joseph Pierce, who will also be giving a separate talk on the friendship of Chesterton and Belloc. Chris Check will be there from Catholic Answers. Dan Kerr, who is the head of president of St. Martin's Academy down in Fort Scott, Kansas, kind of the ordinary leader of the troubadours, the Prairie Troubadour Conference that he has.
Do you want to make a little note on the troubadours too? I mean, it seems to have become a bit of a tradition, but I would encourage our viewers and listeners not to take that for granted. These are some giants. We may not be able to get them all in the same room every single year, so come while you can.
Indeed, yeah, and two up and coming kind of young authors those who have ordered The Everlasting Man. If you ordered it through Word on Fire, you might have seen that they had, for a while at least, a promo of another book about Chesterton by a young man named Brady Stiller, who was the valedictorian from the University of Notre Dame a couple of years back. I forget which year. And he wrote a book on, Chesterton, and basically how Chesterton unlocks the meaning of life in his thoughts. So quite an ambitious thesis, and he'll be presenting on that to us. And then Fabiola Garza, who is has a great book out. I've heard rave reviews of it. It's a sort of storybook, animated book or illustrated book for children. She's a Disney illustrator. She works for Disney Character Animation, and she wrote a book called Princesses of Heaven. And it presents the lives of 6 female saints, kind of in the aesthetic, as it were, of what little girls are attracted to in Disney princesses and things like that. But these are true role models, not quite. You don't want your little girl dreaming to grow up and be a mermaid. You want her to grow up and be a saint, right? So
it's a very sweet book too, and it's very the little girls respond to it. As someone with a couple of little girls and a young niece, it's a great gift. It's a great book, and I'm very excited to meet her and hear what she has to say.
Great.
She's completely charming. Yeah, she did a cover illustration for Gilbert after the Orlando conference of Chesterton, as if he was drawn by a Disney artist, because that's what it was. She was a Disney artist and she drew Chesterton. You look and go, oh yeah, that's what Chesterton would look like in a Disney cartoon.
I love it.
Yeah.
Redeeming Disney. G.K.
Exactly.
Chesterton
Redeeming
conference.
Disney. Is it possible? Is it possible?
ChesterCon 2024. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that Chesterton's own reaction to Disney might have been something like his reaction to Times Square, right? That he said of Times Square that this would be what a pleasure garden this would be if only one was blessed enough not to know how to read. Nice. Just the beautiful lights and everything. If you didn't know they were advertisements, it would just be kind of a fascinating thing. I think in a similar way, there is certainly beauty and wonder, but that's all we'll say about that with respect to Disney. So I just think that's just a preview, by the way. There are more talks on the schedule. You can go to our website, chesterton.org/conference, to learn more about them and some of the other great speakers. And we're still considering adding even a couple more breakouts and things into the schedule. There will be tons to do there. And while we, of course, make great of that, that's not even for most people's money. That's not even the part of the conference that you remember and enjoy the most. You remember the fellowship, the friendship, the getting together with friends at the Afterglow, the beautiful liturgies, the opportunity to pray together, and the friendships that you'll carry forward. Maybe for decades, as was the case with Dale and Aidan. So we do hope to see you there. Anything else, Dale, on either the conference or the passing of Aidan that you'd like to leave our viewers and listeners with?
Aidan had one of the quickest wits of any person I've known. He just had a line ready to go. But one of the best ones that he said was his late wife, Doreen, told me this when I was staying at their house, and that was when his oldest daughter, he had 7 daughters, by the way. His oldest daughter was to be engaged. The young man came and asked for his daughter's hand in marriage, and Aidan said, "Can you support a family? There are 9 of us."
That's great.
Oh, wonderful.
And then the young man knew what he was getting into, I guess.
Yeah, he definitely knew it. He was a great admirer of his father-in-law, that's for sure. He predeceased Aidan. I think he was the one who would have been Aidan's Boswell, probably, but unfortunately died before. But we have some good stories.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once again, viewers and listeners, come to the conference. You'll hear some of those stories, perhaps, and you'll have the opportunity, as I said, to get to see a lot of friends and to not see a lot of friends who will be nonetheless with us, invisible, there in our presence. So, Dale, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Talk to you guys soon. God bless everybody.
God bless you. And Grettelyn, thank you as always.
Thank you, Joe.
And to you, viewers and listeners, thanks for tuning in. I would be remiss not to mention that tomorrow evening as you're watching this, tomorrow evening, Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central. We're continuing on with our Everlasting Man chapter by chapter book club. All of the episodes you might have missed, these are live streams that take place, and you can participate in the chat. Everything you've missed, you can sign up for the list and you'll get access to those recordings. You can do that at chesterton.org/everlastingman, chesterton.org/everlastingman. And of course, don't forget to sign up for the conference while you're at the website at chesterton.org/conference. And until next time, I'm Joe Grabowski. God bless you, and please do invite your friends, share this podcast, because as we know, Chesterton is always better with friends.